Hollywood lied to you about gladiators. They weren't shredded, they weren't eating meat, and the training methods that made them the most feared fighters in Rome, they're the exact opposite of what every modern gym bro preaches. In 1993, scientists dug up a gladiator graveyard in Turkey, and when they analyzed the bones, what they found was so shocking it changed everything we thought we knew about building a warrior's body. Here's what they actually did. Picture this. You're scrolling through your feed and you see another ancient warrior workout video. Probably some guy doing battle rope slams and yelling about Spartan discipline. Right? Because that's what we've been sold. Lean, mean, protein-eating killing machines. But here's the thing. We finally have hard evidence, real skeletons, from an actual gladiator cemetery discovered in Ephesus, Turkey. 22 gladiators, full bone analysis, isotope testing, the works. And what the scientists found? It broke every rule of modern fitness. Let me walk you through it, because each discovery gets more insane than the last. First shock, gladiators carried significantly more body fat than we'd expect. Not kinda soft. I'm talking intentionally carrying significant body fat. The bone analysis confirmed it. These warriors had thick layers of subcutaneous fat. Now, you're probably thinking, wait, that makes no sense. How does being fat make you a better fighter? Here's where it gets interesting. Their diet was heavily carb-based. Researchers estimate somewhere around 70 to 80%. Barley porridge for breakfast, bean mash for lunch, more barley for dinner. Ancient physician Galen, who literally worked as the gladiator doctor, documented this. He wrote about their meals, barley pudding mixed with beans, sometimes watered down into a soup. The Romans even had a nickname for them, hordeari, the barley eaters. Now here's what you're expecting me to say. They were slaves, so they couldn't afford meat. Wrong. Dr. Carl Gross-Schmidt, who led the Ephesus bone study, proposed a tactical explanation. And when I tell you this, you're going to realize these Romans were tactical geniuses. His theory? The fat was armor. Think about it. You're in an arena. Your opponent has a sword, maybe a trident, a net. Every fight involves bladed weapons slashing at your body. If you're lean and shredded, abs showing, skin tight against muscle, every cut goes deep, straight to nerves, blood vessels, critical structures. One good slice and you're done. But a layer of fat? If I get wounded, but just in the fatty layer, I can fight on, Gross-Schmidt said. It doesn't hurt much, and it looks great for the spectators. Surface wounds, lots of blood. The crowd goes wild, but you're still fighting. The fat cushion protected nerves and blood vessels. It was tactical armor you gained by eating. And here's the kicker. Those dramatic surface wounds, they healed faster than deep cuts, so gladiators could fight more frequently, make more money for their owners, and survive longer in the arena. They weren't optimizing for Instagram. They were optimizing for survival. Okay, second shock. And this one's going to make every "you need 200 grams of protein a day" fitness influencer lose their mind. These warriors built their physiques primarily on plants. The isotope analysis proved it. Gladiators ate more plant-based foods than regular Roman citizens. Their protein came mostly from beans, lentils, peas, with significantly less animal protein than typical Romans. Now, before you say, but they were slaves, they couldn't afford meat, stop. Some gladiators were free men who competed voluntarily. They still ate the same diet. Why? Because it worked. Think about what this diet actually provided. Massive caloric surplus from cheap carbohydrates, all-day energy for training, enough protein from legumes to maintain muscle mass, and most importantly, it built that protective fat layer. But here's what's really wild. The Roman legions, the most feared military force in the ancient world, the army that conquered most of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, they ate the same diet. Barley and beans, the greatest warriors in history were running on a vegetarian meal plan. Now, I know what you're thinking, but what about their bones? Doesn't a grain-heavy diet cause calcium deficiency? Oh, we're getting to that, and trust me, the solution is disgusting. Here's the problem. Barley doesn't give you much calcium, and you need strong bones to survive getting hit in the face with a shield. So what did gladiators do? They drank charred wood and bone ash mixed with vinegar after every training session. Yes, really. Ancient texts from Pliny the Elder mentioned this ash tonic. For centuries, historians thought it was exaggerated or maybe ceremonial, like, oh, those Romans and their weird rituals. But when scientists analyzed the gladiator bones from Ephesus, they found something shocking. The calcium levels were exorbitant. the exact word the researchers used, way higher than normal Romans, bone density comparable to modern professional athletes. The ash drink actually worked. It was their ancient Gatorade, their pre-workout supplement, their calcium fortification, all mixed into one absolutely vile concoction. Think about that. 2,000 years before supplement companies, gladiators figured out how to hack their micronutrient deficiency by drinking literal ash. They weren't guessing. They knew it worked because fighters who drank it had fewer bone breaks and recovered faster from injuries. This was supplementation before we even had the word for it. Now let's talk about how they actually trained, because this is where it gets even more interesting. Ancient sources describe gladiator training following structured cycles. Intense days followed by skill work, then recovery. Some historians believe they may have used variations of the Greek tetrad system, a 4-day cycle alternating high intensity, technical work, and recovery. Whether gladiators specifically followed this isn't confirmed, but we know their training wasn't random. Notice something? Structured intensity variation, built-in recovery days. Sound familiar? This wasn't just mindlessly swinging swords until you collapsed. This was structured, scientific training. But here's the part that'll blow your mind. Gladiators trained with wooden weapons that were significantly heavier than their real combat weapons. You know what that is? That's progressive overload. That's train heavy, so competition feels light. That's exactly what modern strength athletes do. When fight day came, their actual sword felt like a toy compared to what they'd been training with. Faster swings, less fatigue, tactical advantage. 2,000 years ago, their resistance training? It looked like modern strongman competitions. Stone dumbbells called halteres, logs, rocks, awkward-shaped objects, heavy carries with unbalanced loads, natural resistance training, no fancy cable machines, no preacher curl bench. Just full-body functional movements with heavy, awkward objects. They also did tons of bodyweight training. Pull-ups, push-ups, squats, lunges, dips, isometric holds. Everything was a full-body movement, nothing isolated. Because here's what they understood. You don't fight with isolated muscles. You fight with your entire body working as one unit. And training was all day, split into focused blocks. 1 hour weapons work, 1 hour strength training, 1 hour endurance. They treated it like a full-time job, because it was. Now here's where gladiators were really ahead of their time. Gladiators had access to standard Roman recovery methods, massage and alternating hot and cold baths. Sound familiar? That's contrast therapy. The exact recovery protocol elite athletes use in 2025. What NFL players do after games, what Olympic athletes do after training. Gladiators were doing it 2,000 years ago. Here's how it works. Hot water causes blood vessels to dilate. Cold water causes them to constrict. Alternating between the two creates a pumping effect. It flushes metabolic waste like lactic acid. It brings fresh oxygen and nutrients to muscles. It reduces inflammation. It speeds recovery. The Romans didn't have the science to explain why it worked, but through centuries of trial and error, they figured out this was one of the best recovery methods available. And gladiators, as elite athletes, had full access to it. And 1,800 years later, we're still using it. Think about that. We have ice baths, saunas, cryotherapy chambers, hyperbaric oxygen chambers, all this modern technology, and we ended up right back where the Romans started. So what can we actually learn from this? First, aesthetics and performance are not the same thing. Gladiators didn't look like action movie stars. They looked like fighters. Strong, powerful, but carrying more body fat than you'd expect. And that was optimal for their goal. Second, you don't need animal protein at every meal to build muscle. Could it help? Sure. Is it required? Obviously not. Gladiators and Roman legions proved you can build serious strength and size on a plant-based diet if the training stimulus is intense enough. Third, progressive overload isn't a modern concept. Training with heavier tools than you'll actually use, making training harder over time, varying intensity, building in recovery. Romans understood this 2,000 years ago. Fourth, train the way you compete. Gladiators weren't doing bicep curls and calf raises. They were doing full body movements with awkward objects that translated directly to combat. Fifth, recovery is part of training. The hot-cold baths, the massages, the built-in recovery days, these weren't luxuries, they were part of the system. You can't perform at a high level without proper recovery. Now, am I saying you should eat like a gladiator? Probably not. We have better protein sources, better nutrition science, and you're probably not fighting for your life with a trident. But the principles? Those still hold up. The most feared fighters in ancient Rome got that way by doing things that would seem insane to modern gym culture. They ate mostly plants. They intentionally gained fat. They drank ash for calcium. They trained with principles we're only now rediscovering. And they recovered like professional athletes. Maybe the gladiators knew something we forgot. Or maybe we're finally remembering what actually works. If you want more deep dives into historical training methods backed by actual archaeological evidence and modern science, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.